Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board of the City of Birmingham for Wednesday, June 10th, 2000. Could we please call the roll?
Rob Klein.
Present.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
George Jeffries. David Larson.
Here.
Daniel Scher.
Here.
Janelle Woodley-Boyce.
Here.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Jonathan Curry.
Here.
Matthew Mermet.
So he's a voting member.
All right, so just for the record, Mr. Curry is a voting member tonight, right, if my math is correct. So let's move forward to a review and approval of the minutes of May 13th. I know I have one comment, but does anybody else have anything to
Okay,
share?
I have two comments. On page 3 of the minutes, of the 5th bullet, the first sentence should end, the phrase, "from a planning perspective" should be added, so it should read, "Both variances receive support from board members from a planning perspective." In the motion, item 4, where it says planning board finds preliminary plans presented, et cetera, I think it's a total of the reduction to 399 spaces instead of.
Correct. I caught that too.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty,
Yeah,
that's a pretty important two-letter word.
yeah. While we're on at the first page of the minutes, under the chair's comments, I welcomed all attendees. So, my inner Dan Scher coming through. Any other comments?
I don't recall that. I think welcome is right. Speaking English. Just kidding.
I see no other comments. I would entertain a motion.
Motion.
So we have a motion from Mr. Boyle as amended. Do we have a second?
Support.
Support, Mr. Larson.
Sorry.
His first official motion. We got to give it to him.
Good to do it.
Please.
Any conversation at the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Fantastic. Well, welcome to anyone watching at home. We have an old-fashioned meeting today, an old-fashioned study session, which I've actually been excited about because we don't get these much anymore. So we will just be talking about items internal toward the zoning ordinance and other aspects of land planning, and then very little action will be taken today. It will all be about setting forward on proper processes for any changes that we may see. Opportunity for public input, and I will get into that as we get to the individual items. So with that, Mr. Dupuy, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Fantastic. Why don't we roll into this, to our item tonight, which is the short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals, yes. I think I'd like to take
City attorney.
a specific tact tonight by separating my presentation into 4, obviously related but different parts. The first part, I think, is rather simple. I'd like to just recap where we've been and how we got here very quickly. We all know it started on April 27th, where the City Commission placed that 6-month moratorium, but also directed us to review these ordinances and 5 specific items, at least in that resolution, of study. What I didn't get to at the last meeting on May 13th that I should tell you is that 6 months from April 27th is Tuesday, October 27th. Seems far away, but you know how that goes. There are 8 planning board meetings between now and October 27th. However, I mean, technically, once we get pretty close to language, which we may be close soon, we only really need 2. We do need to have a public hearing, and we do need to hold a public hearing. So that's going to take us into probably at least August. So considering that, if that happens, there are only 4 City Commission meetings for October 27th before their moratorium expires. Now, of course, they can extend moratoriums, but just a little context. The end date, we have a little bit of wiggle room, but not as much as you might think. The Commission has discussed this several times. Right after April 27th, they discussed it on May 4th. Moving forward, on May 13th, we had our first meeting, which we had a great discussion. And since then, the commission's met twice, May 18th and June 8th. Both meetings, they received reports, or we call them the short-term rental reports, per their request. They want summaries of basically anything we've done related to short-term rentals from the last meeting. So the building department reports code complaints, tickets, any new information, any changes in their policy. Police does the same. And in this case, at the first meeting on May 18th, we summarized the May 13th planning board discussion, which generated a question from them that resulted in a formal request to provide them a list of questions on June 8th so that they can give you some feedback for today. It's kind of a very confusing line, before we meet next Monday, to try and maybe economize it a little bit. That's where we are. We're on June 10th, pushing towards a joint meeting on June 15th, looking to clarify a few things. Now, by clarify a few things, what I feel, and this second part of my presentation, was clear from you all at the last meeting. May I summarize it as, I felt like you guys needed me to help define the problem a little bit better before we dove into the actual ordinance language. Help you understand the current conditions in Birmingham, help you understand what other communities are doing, their approaches and why, and help you understand some of the context in the greater scheme of things. So I did give you some ordinances. It was commented, I think rightly so, that lots of tourism communities. So I tried my best to find non-tourist communities, or at least not directly related to tourism, and I found a few more. I think the most interesting of which is Pleasant Ridge, who is considered a peer of ours, I would say. As you may have experienced yourself, there sure is a lot of noise out there with short-term rentals. Some people are exploring it. Something just happened in Hazel Park, not very similar, but more tragic, arguably, at a short-term rental, and they've now put a moratorium on their short-term rentals. I assume that ordinances will come out of that as well. So lots of noise, lots of news stories, but there's a few things that I think are clear. And before I get into those, I'll outline the data a little bit. This was a specific request, bring us data and show it on a map. So we requested from the building department 2025 data. As I explained, that's the most complete data we have. 2026 is just a little incomplete at this time. 2,321 certified rental units in Birmingham in 2025. Emphasis on the word certified. We're very aware that there's rentals out there that are uncertified or fly-by-night or unregistered, all those things which we are working on, but certified, 2,300. I do note here, because I think it's important, that about 1,200 or over 50% are within multiple family dwellings. These are just your ordinary apartment buildings, rental buildings. It's also worth noting, because it's been mentioned a lot, that based on the data we have from the applications, only, less than 800, or about 33%, are owned by persons with Birmingham addresses. I think that was a talking point of ours. Corporate ownership, local ownership, things like that factors into, I think, what we'll ultimately do with the ordinance.
Mr. Dupuy,
yeah.
I'm sorry, real quickly. So you said that 1,200 are in multifamily buildings, which
Yes.
makes sense. But that still means that if my math is correct, 1,100 are in single-family homes, or single-family, or duplexes. if you-
Duplexes, maybe.
In this community, which according to your numbers would be more than 10, almost 12% of the entire housing population of the city of Birmingham.
Yes, I have.
Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just thought it would, I mean,
Yeah, I
this is
guess I
not,
didn't extract
this is
that
not
specific
an
number,
issue
but-
of 5 or 10 homes. This is 10% of the overall housing stock in this
Yeah,
city.
I hope you could tell by the map, it's rather
I was surprised by that. Okay, thank you.
colored. So yeah, I mean, these large swaths kind of throw you off, but tons of rentals and tons of densely placed rentals.
Yes. Ms.
Yeah.
Boyce?
Your 33% was of owners who live in Birmingham as well?
I clarify a little bit, friendly amendment, owners that have Birmingham addresses.
Okay, so in Is that 33% of the 3,000 number or of the 11, or whatever?
That is the total,
The total?
out of all
Because that's-
2,300, 775.
A little
So that's
Lot of
skewed.
external-
almost 800 units in this community owned by people that don't have a mailing address in the city.
Right.
That do,
Doesn't mean it's not local.
That do, but the rest don't.
right.
But
So
that
70,
building
do we have-
67% don't.
different than,
Do we have any information in the residential areas, how many of these are in duplexes? Because I would assume that almost all the duplexes have rentals. Area east of the post office being one.
Yeah, here, like
Many are single family.
in the Haynes area, that's a lot of duplex. It's a little hard to, from the data spreadsheet that I was given,
I just didn't know. I couldn't tell.
understand that. I could manually verify, but I'm not sure
What was it, 300?
that it might be, I don't mean it the way it sounds. I'm not sure it'd be worth it, the exercise. We generally know,
Yeah.
we can probably,
I would just say, however you parse it, it's a fairly significant number.
Yeah.
Which underscores the importance of what we're doing here. It's not just for 4 or 5 properties, it's for thousands.
yeah, and the effect on those, because, as we mentioned, there's difference between long and short-term rentals. So
But these are
Trying
the
to get
long
into Birmingham schools.
many are long-term.
Many are long-term, but
That's all rentals. What we don't have awesome data on is short versus long,
You have 14
which I'll get into a little bit,
Birmingham schools.
because I think it was, some of the commissioner comments on Monday were kind of related to that, so I will touch on that.
Years ago.
But in terms of defining the issues, I tried my best, based on the things I've read, the things I've heard, and the things we've been directed by the city commission, to try and build findings, if you will. I think Mr. Sherry used the term findings in the last meeting. Because this is a big issue, because it is 22% of our housing unit stock, it's kind of important that we do our diligence on it, and whatever resulting language we develop should be based upon something, not just, I think it was basically said, it shouldn't just be because someone directed us to, we should base it on something. So I did my best to summarize what I believe I heard, and I summarized the issues as: 1, changes to neighborhood character; 2, noise, nuisance, and quality of life; 3, public safety to respond; 4, enforcement challenges. And I also feel like I'm drawing out some themes that it appears to me that short-term rentals do have demonstrated effects on neighborhoods, how neighbors connect, trust, safety, familiarity, and pride, those types of things. And what we're actively doing as a part of our 2040 plan is trying to build that up, not break it down. So moving on to the third section, which I'm going to shift a little bit to Monday night. I mentioned in my preamble that we were asked to furnish a series of questions. I furnished 4. I rewatched the meeting, drew some questions out, worked with Chair Klein on refining those to make sure that I had them right, and so that we could get something of worth in return, some clarity. The first question, I think, was answered fairly concisely. It was the question of whether or not the City Commission intended us to focus on single-family residential neighborhoods, or if our mixed-use districts are also something to be considered. I think they answered pretty plainly that they feel as though our mixed-use districts should be considered as a part of this ordinance, as neighborhoods, as whatever you want to call them, but there's a lot of housing units in those areas, so they feel as though it should be treated the same. Understanding, though, as one of the commissioners mentioned, that part of what we're doing here in the single-family residential neighborhoods is restricting a commercial use, as the Supreme Court has determined. So there's some nuance to flesh out there about, shall I say, restricting what's deemed as a commercial use in commercial zones. I think there's some finesse that we'll have to try to work through there. The second question, allowing exceptions to the owner-occupied units or hosted units. This is where it did get a little fuzzy. I think what was clear is that hosted units, that is units where you rent out a room or space to somebody while you're in the unit yourself, is no problem at all. They think we should clearly write an exception to those types of rentals. When you got to owner occupied, that is, a person owns the house but is renting to somebody else versus like corporate ownership, for example, got a little fuzzy. We use the A standard, it's a tax mechanism from what I understand, correct? I think
Mr. Dupuy, do you want to get into each of these individually, or how would you like to proceed? I'm sure people may have comments on each. Do you want to go through
okay.
it all? How do you want to do it?
maybe I'll just, because I'm
Because you're
like
starting to ask
3/4
questions, and I feel like it's going to turn into a discussion. And
Fair
that's
enough.
great, but I don't want to derail you.
Fair enough. Let me just, I'm 3/4 of the way through. Let me just wrap it up.
And then we'll circle back?
Yeah, if that's all right.
That's fine.
So then, that got a little fuzzy in terms of how many days out of the year they're going to be allowed. I think questions 3 and 4 were similar in that they're kind of asking the commission, do you want other categories other than short-term? Do you want us to consider a midterm rental unit style? And I think the answer was no. And I think related, the questions of density, where we suggested short-term, yeah, that would make sense. Long-term doesn't make any sense to regulate density. But what about middle-term? It followed that because they don't really want us to look at middle-term housing, they don't really want us to pursue density any further. And so,
Mr. Williams?
But wasn't that not now? That would be reserved for a later discussion.
exactly, as a final,
I mean, it wasn't a final decision, no, it was, let's not deal with it now.
I think there were a couple of things where they suggested that they leave the door cracked in the future.
Yeah.
Should we find it important, or should it become important at any point? That we can always come and revisit this. But
Yeah.
I think it was all clear that they are sensitive to the timeline here, and that they don't want to, forgive the term, but bog anything down, going on any side quests here. They want to just handle the issue at hand, and perhaps explore it in the future should we find it important.
Yes.
The fourth section is really just a quick ordinance statement, I guess. I included the rental unit definition in here because I think that's probably the most important thing to start with. I did speak with Mr. Scher, and I did incorporate a lot of his suggestions in this to kind of tighten it up. But if you could, tonight, let me know what you think about that definition specifically, because much of what we'll be building is based on that. So, in closing, I think I'm interested in a lot of conversation. I think some things have been cleared up. If you'd be so kind to just forgive me, I might be asking some pretty direct or blunt questions, because I feel like I need to start that ordinance work for our next meeting, so I need to know a few things. So if I don't understand, or if I need to understand, I might just ask so that so I can leave here very clear.
That's why we're here.
Yep. But with that, I'm ready to rock and roll on the
Thank you,
conversation.
Mr. Dupuy. I'm going to tell you first, I told you this offline, but I think the packet you put together this week was quite well done.
Thank you.
I was very happy to see that. I think you explained things well and allowed us to make some findings eventually on this matter. And so, thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
I also know that waiting through Monday night was not always very easy, having watched it myself. So maybe let's just go back quickly through those 4 questions and make sure where we're at with these, and get any other quick discussion on the board. The first one really related to scope with regard to residential areas and our mixed-use areas, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if anyone from the board has a comment on this. I guess I can summarize by agreeing with you that they were very clear that they wanted all residential areas looked at. I don't think that they discerned the difference between a residential unit in a mixed-use building versus a single-family, other than if we were going to run afoul with the courts, is the way I took that. And please jump in, anybody, if you disagree with me. Is there anybody that has questions or comments or concerns about that?
Well,
Is this a good time
It's
to
not-
have a conversation?
Yeah, this is about this issue,
About
yes.
this particular topic?
I think we need to give Nick some direction on what he's going to write, so let's talk about this issue right here.
It's not clear to me that the commission thought about or expressed an opinion about I'm not sure whether there's a technical term for it, I know, but I'm drawing a blank on it. So we have like a tiered ordinance. You can, in the business, you residential. In the office, you can have residential, so on and so forth. So to me, there's a big difference between whatever residential uses there are in the business zones, and the downtown in particular, and the Triangle District, for example, or
A pure mixed use?
yeah,
Okay.
pure mixed use. So that's one thing, and I'm inclined, for a couple of reasons, not to try and regulate residential uses in the business, office, downtown zones, in the non-pure mixed use zones. Okay, so that's sort of one aspect of it.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Forgive the interrupting the thought. So furthermore, what Dan's saying is that in a B2B district, for example, you can have anything from a grocery store all the way down to a single-family residential dwelling if you wanted. Now, is that highest and best? No. Do we ever see that? No. But do you mean, Mr. Chair, that if in the impossible event that someone wanted to buy commercial property and build a single-family home, you don't think that that should apply?
Well, I'm not sure what that is, but I think, so, we take a step
This.
back.
Okay.
What we're doing is talking about what the zoning ordinance is going to do. Okay? And so within that, we're talking about what uses make sense, what uses don't make sense, what we can legitimately prohibit in this, that, or other. I think it's very difficult, and I will go back to some of the things I said last meeting, which are, in fact, underlined and expanded by a couple of the academic articles that you included, which were very interesting.
Yes.
I thought so too, yeah, good.
That, from Birmingham's point of view, and if we want to, we could get into how Birmingham differs from Barcelona, London, Chicago, whatever, but from Birmingham's point of view, the primary set of problems have to do with public safety, neighborhood cohesion, and accountability. So transience and accountability. In the business, the office, the downtown district, you have transients, you have hotel uses as permitted uses. So from a zoning perspective legally, I think it's difficult to start saying, well, we're going to allow hotels, and we're not going to, or we're going to regulate in some sense, short-term rentals in single-family homes, duplexes, apartments, what have you, unless we start then getting into density questions, which is a more complicated problem and one which, delays, in order to do it properly, it delays things. And I'm not sure that it adds anything, because the transience problems in the downtown district come perhaps in part from people who are short-term residents, but also in large part from visitors who visit the establishments that sell regulated substances to about 2 a.m.
Or fridge.
So, Mr. Chair, my only comment to that, and I appreciate everything you said, my only comment to that is I've been thinking about this for a long time as well. And, we regulate, our zoning ordinance is divided into zoning categories, zoning districts, but those are really what they are. They're categories. They're there to sort and organize. But what really zoning is all about, isn't it, is about use and intensity at the end of the day. And I look at a mixed-use building, whether it's in the Triangle District or whether it's Merrillwood Apartments in around the corner from here. Our zoning ordinance already restricts the manner in which the uses are put together in those buildings. We don't allow transient uses on the same floor as residential units. We don't allow office or commercial to be above residential units. In fact, we require residential units to be at the top of the buildings, segregated from the rest of the glorious urban chaos that comes with living in places like this. So, to me, I don't know that to me, I see that we are already regulating the separation of these uses. So that if we were to say, the issue, as you said, is transience and intensity, but it's the use. So if we were to say that the residential areas of mixed-use buildings, regardless of where they're located, are akin to a multifamily building over on Pembroke or, off of Eaton, I would feel highly comfortable with that. And in fact, I would almost think that we would be downgrading the living experience of someone living in the core, if you will, by saying that they're different and that we shouldn't touch them and shouldn't protect them in the way that the commission has asked us to do so. So I disagree with you a little bit on that.
I guess I'm not sure I entirely follow you, because the issue here is, or let me back up again, from my perspective, what underpins our ability in the zoning ordinance to regulate rentals of less than 30 days is the impact on the use, the impact on the area in which the use occurs. And we have both considerable data on in our residential neighborhoods and academic reports and studies and what have you, that there is a significant impact in the residential, I'll call it the single-family residential, but the purely residential districts. So far as I can tell, we don't have that same experience in the urban core, the downtown business district. So I'm reluctant to start down the path of regulating short-term rentals in an area where there's already the cheek-by-jowl residential and business uses, and no indication that whatever issues there are with problems of rowdiness, with problems of vandalism, are related, in any respect to short-term rentals. Maybe there aren't any, I don't know, but that they're largely related and have been for years to outside visitors coming in to take advantage of the nightlife that the city offers. Mm-hmm. So in part, I'm trying to stay focused on at least maybe it's a stage 1, stage 2 problem, making sure that there's good, solid, supportable findings that stay, they're readily defensible.
Understood.
If I could sort of jump in, and I want to take the conversation slightly away from downtown. Can you bring up the map of all the rentals? Okay, thank you. Glancing at the map, which is what we're asked to do, to look at where things occur, it strikes me that we've arguably got 6 clusters of six clearly defined clusters of rental properties, traditional and short-term. North Woodward, clear. Adams North, clear as a bell. Pembroke, clear as a bell. East Maple, clear as a bell. The Triangle, emerging, and clearly the Rail District. I would argue that the first 4, North Woodward, Adams North, Pembroke, and East Maple, are largely adjacent and indeed part of traditional single-family residential developments, neighbourhoods, and should, I'd argue, be regulated accordingly. Whatever you're doing in residential, in R1s to R whatever it is, that would apply to the clusters that I've just identified. The other 2 clusters, however, and most notably the Rail District, might be, and I would argue should be, considered differently and potentially regulated differently because they're mixed-use districts. Allowing controlled short-term rentals in these districts should serve to differentiate and highlight and encourage, in fact, diversity in these 2 areas. That's what we did in the plan, the Rail District plan and the Triangle plan, and it calls out for diversity. It calls out for diversity of buildings, of structures, of uses, of activities, public and private. And I would think that if we apply a regulation that is acceptable in holy name for an R1 is not appropriate for much of the other of these two areas that I've identified. And I'd even go further and argue that the literature that we were given, and it was great, by the way, I thought the packet was one of the best we've ever got, called out the fact that there's value in in short-term rentals. They add to colour, activity, vitality, opportunity, fun. Other people might go and invest in bars and restaurants and clubs and all sorts of things. It's the opposite of what we're looking at. We're sort of knee-jerk reaction to something which was bad, and I accept that. But it doesn't mean that the same regulation should apply across all the city. So the word all was one that I pulled out to help keep calling it out. That's my opinion.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In the triangle area, you've got 4 absolutely totally dedicated single-family residential streets.
Right.
That's different.
But they're clearly pulled out. They're not identified in our plan because they are distinctively single-family homes, and we've called that out in the plan. But the other ones, where we've got the
But I mean,
Point,
it's the triangle area is not, what I'm saying is not uniform.
true, fair point. I did worry about that when I was thinking about it.
North End is not uniform.
No, it's not. But the Rail District?
Rail District is different. I live there. It's very different in many respects. No, in all respects.
Anyway, that's just the
Other
point.
thoughts?
You asked about the
Absolutely.
end.
Ms.
What if-
Boyce?
I haven't decided anything, but what about the idea that we have plenty of opportunities for visitors and people to short-term rent in our hotels, for example?
It's a great question.
Just throwing it out there, because it's not as if we're saying that we don't want people to come to our city for a long weekend or for a week. Because we do, obviously, but, and we have places for them to stay for shorter amount of times other than multifamily developed areas or single-family homes or mixed-use areas. So I'm just throwing it out there to think about.
3 hotels.
Mr. Chair.
The question that raises, Janelle, is one of, you can call it affordability, you can call it market penetration, but we have, I think, 3 hotels. We have the Daxton, we have the Townsend, which are at the upper end. There's a Holiday Inn Express, which is not at the upper end. So, the question is, would, in those areas where short-term rentals are appropriate uses, which, again, I would argue are the same areas the hotels are in now, is there a benefit that we want to allow or not prohibit for the potential of a lower price point for a short-term rental? And one of the things that, and I forget which one of the articles it was, but one of the articles made the point of saying that when you're deciding whether to regulate and in what way, you take a look at the benefits and compare those to the burdens and come up with a decision about what makes sense. And Robin's correct. There were 2 primary benefits that short-term rentals provided. One was an economic benefit to both the the people who own the properties who are renting it, because you will get, if you're successful in this model, you get much more revenue out of a series of short-term rentals than you will out of a 6-month or 12-month lease. And the other was for local business. That, the local businesses will be, or at least the local businesses that cater to short-term visitors, perhaps the local businesses like dry cleaners, perhaps that don't really cater to short-term visitors will, maybe not. But those were the primary, benefits, and you burden that against costs, which are both, the articles I thought got into some really interesting aspects I hadn't thought about in terms of social cohesion and neighborhood involvement. But, so again, as I look at it, and if I focus back on the rail district, I think Robin's probably, that's an area that makes sense to allow. But, in the traditional single-family residential districts, I don't think it does.
And
We'll go this way, boys.
I just thought of one other thing, too. If we're thinking about places like Merrillwood or Birmingham Place, or even some of the smaller sort of condo places, maybe on the north end of Old Woodward or something like that, maybe are we worrying too much about something that might not even be a problem, because a lot of these groups have associations within, and they have rules that they cannot, or they have a limited number that are allowed to lease, and perhaps we leave it up to them to make their own rules. If short-term rentals in a multi-family building, be it a 10-unit building or a 200-unit building, if short-term rentals become a problem, then their boards can make rules to prohibit them, I presume, right? So are we worrying about something that maybe isn't even something we need to be worrying about? And to your point, maybe we don't need to be regulating those kind of groups, because they might do some of their own self-regulating. I mean, I can think of a couple condos I've lived in over the years where in the bylaws, and as an owner, in the bylaws, the rules said we couldn't short-term rent, and only 10% of the units in the entire building were allowed to lease, and with permission from the board, or to some effect like that. So maybe it's not such a concern.
Yeah, the problem with that is that those are community regulations that can be changed.
Right, without our consent.
And so, and they, depending upon the makeup of the ownership, or the people with the voting rights, whoever that happens to be, maybe those interests change.
But maybe that's why it's not a problem for us. Like, if we're looking at short-term rentals in terms of single-family homes or duplexes within neighborhoods, for example, that's slightly a different issue, as you both described, than maybe some of these bigger buildings that have condo associations because of what I just described.
My only response would be, it feels like a punt from us, that we're sitting here saying that we're going to regulate short-term rentals in every R1 through R8 property in this city, but we're not going to worry about these big ones because maybe they'll take care of themselves. It just kind of seems like we're not doing our job, so to speak. I want to get Duncan in here, and then we'll maybe move along.
Purely financially, like Dan was saying, there's a benefit to the owner and to the local businesses by short-term rentals, but I also think there also is a piece of the revenue from Airbnb and VRBO that is owed to the city where the buildings sit.
Yeah.
It's not a huge percentage, but there is a benefit.
Well, Mr. Dupuy, I guess for moving forward right now, I hear a number of people leaning toward not including purely commercial districts, and probably not including mixed-use districts in this. So I might suggest that in order for you to move forward, perhaps that's your starting point, knowing that I think this is probably something that is going to come up at a meeting, and we can have a little bit further discussion in front of the policymakers to vet it out. I guess I'll just add, Mr. Boyle, what you and Mr. Sherry, you mentioned the Triangle District. I mean, as somebody that lives 2 blocks from the Triangle District and who goes over there quite often, I can tell you that the northern part of the Triangle District is a residential area? Is it suburban oriented? Was it done in a way that I like for the city of Birmingham? Probably not. But it is a residential neighborhood. And to tell me that they should not have the same protection to make sure they don't have 52 weekends a year where there's someone moving in, it strikes me as rather hollow just because there's another plan that said it's supposed to be eclectic. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. We can, or you want the final word, I'll give it to you.
No, I have a question as well. Could you bring the map up again?
Sure.
Could you just answer or tell us about age-restricted rentals and assisted living and how they're defined and regulated? Because if you look on the map, All Seasons on Elm Street comes up as clearly rentals, but Stony Point at the far end of Lincoln does not. And that sort of caught my attention, and I thought, that's odd. Now, I know there's a dementia unit on Lincoln, and that might be a different category, but why would one be considered rentals and the other not?
I have a completely unsatisfactory answer for you,
I'll get back to you on it.
which is kind of like, I don't know, but also this is simply the data we were given for certified rentals.
Yeah.
So I'll have to see, because they are both independent senior living facilities in the zoning
That's an
sense,
interesting question.
but I think from building code, it could be different.
Yeah. I just
So-
wanted to, I saw, well, my first question,
Yeah,
a
it's
question.
yeah,
There it is.
yeah.
I'll
All right,
come
Mr.
back. I'll-
Dupuy, maybe we keep going, is that okay?
Yes, I'd like to say, though, because of two things. One, the answers that I was given on Monday night, that where the commission said, without this context, that they would like to treat it the same. I do get the sense there are a couple of you that agree with that, what my strategy is going to be is I'm going to write it in, because it's easier for me to take it out than it is for me to scramble and fit it back in. So when you see the ordinance, just understand that I know the conversation here. It's just simply an efficiency strategy for me, to just write it all in now and cut it out, should we agree that it needs to be cut out, say Monday, when we decide.
I would like to have this kind of conversation in front of
Yeah.
the commission if we could.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. The second one was really an extension of this in some regards. We talked about exemptions. And this was kind of all over the place on Monday.
Agreed.
I'm going to jump in because this is the one that I think I'm most passionate about, quite frankly, is that I think that despite the commission saying they don't want to worry about midterm, I really think that we need to define the different types of rentals in this community, even if we're not going to do anything with them in the ordinance. Because there was such confusion, I thought, at times over what we were discussing. So I would like to suggest, one, that, whether we define short-term or if it's already in your rental definition, because we can't have anything under 30 days anyway. But it seems like we're going to have some exemptions, so maybe we need to define a short-term rental as something under 30 days. We need to define, in my opinion, a midterm rental, and then let the commission or the city manager next year, 2 years, decide if they treat them differently from an administrative perspective, a license perspective, fine. But at least it's defined and we don't have to get into it anymore. I'm not suggesting we have to do anything in the ordinance because the commission clearly said that they're not necessarily interested, though I do want to talk to them about that as well. But I think define long-term, therefore, and then lastly, we really need to define what is a hosted rental and what is an owner-occupied rental, because there was such confusion on Monday, I think, with due respect. I think we need to make sure that we are clearly stating what those are. And if we're going to exempt any or all, we need to define what they are so it's pretty clear. To me, a hosted rental is the rental or lease of a portion of a residential unit that is the property owner's primary residence, and the size of the rental shall not exceed 50% of the square footage of the overall living area, and that the property owner remains in residence for the length of the stay.
That's a hosted.
That's a hosted rental to me. The 50% number, in case you guys are asking, comes from the Michigan statute, which, because I looked it up. MCL 211-7DD subparagraph C defines a principal residence, states that if you are renting from it, you still can claim that status as long as you're not renting more than 50% of your home. Okay? I think that's a fine way to confirm that the person is going to be there, that it's their house, it's not some corporate thing. And if they want an exemption on that, I'm probably okay with that. As long as we write the language enough so that we're not allowing them to move to an ADU and rent the whole house out. But the second one, which is a whole separate discussion, let's not get into that. The second one, the owner-occupied rental, to me, is a rental or lease of a residential unit that is the property owner's primary residence, which under this ordinance shall mean a residential unit in which the property owner resides in for a minimum of 183 days in a calendar year. Also from the Michigan statute, that's MCL 206.18, which defines residency in the state of Michigan as someone living here for 183 days. So if they're going to claim the primary residency exemption from the Homestead Act, and they're going to claim an exemption here, they damn well better be a resident in that home 183 days, as far as I'm concerned. And then, if we're going to allow those exemptions, my last word would be, I don't know that I have any real issue with the hosted. This person's there. I mean, I don't know that I really care. But the owner-occupied, let's realize that that means they could rent their home for 182 days in a year. So there's no way that I'm going to sit here and say that I think they should get an exemption to be able to do it for, a long weekend or 18 long weekends during the course of a year. There's got to be some other control in place, because otherwise we're just saying that people that live here 6 months in a day are better judges of character than people that don't.
I agree.
So whether it's allowing them to go less than 30 days if they're primary residents, if they're owner-occupied, perhaps we have to have a floor. Perhaps it has to be a minimum of a week, or a minimum of 2 weeks, quite frankly, on that rental at any 2 consecutive weeks, to ensure we don't have the party pads, to ensure that it's just someone renting their house for a couple weeks because they're on vacation.
Well, or living in Florida.
Sure.
I mean, or Arizona. I mean, we got a lot of people here
Right.
in this city that are here
Right.
Half the year.
6 months.
That's true.
and
But they
a day
can
and
already
gone.
do it over, they could still already do it over 30 days. We're just now saying they can do it for 2 weeks if we want to give them an exemption.
Why would we?
I guess my feeling
City Commission
is, the
suggested.
distinction you've made it is of huge significance. If you've got a home that the homeowner is not there 161 days out of the year, to me, the restrictions have to apply. I mean, the short-term rental restrictions have to apply. Otherwise, we've got, I don't know what percentage of Birmingham residents are gone in the winter, but it's huge. It's huge. And these houses are either rented or unoccupied for huge, huge periods of time. And in my neighborhood, there are a lot of them, just are. And I would say in Quarton Lake Estates, where I used to live, there were huge numbers. They were just vacant.
Other reactions to those definitions? Should we do those? Should something along those lines? Should
We have to.
discuss? Mr. Chair.
So I think a couple of things. First, we don't have to use the definition in the tax code, which is where you got that stuff.
No, I was doing it for consistency
Yeah, no,
and legal defense.
I understand, but I think, I agree with Brian. 183 days to me it leaves too much. So, we could come up with a different number. Okay. I think one of the things, and Nick, you may want to have a discussion with your colleagues about this, is the administrative burden of that. Because now, let's say that we were to say, you know what, if you're gone for a month, you go to wherever for a month, and you want to rent your house out for a few days, maybe even up to 30 days in that window, conceptually, it's okay, we want to help you out. But then how do you police that? How do you enforce that? How do you keep track of that? I mean, that's, to me, that's a big issue, especially given the fact that there's no reason to think that the people who rent from those people are going to be any better behaved or any less of a threat than anybody else. Now, I played around with the idea of saying, well, okay, what if you make the homeowner responsible? That produces but I'm not, that works. We'd probably want to talk to council responsible for what, but maybe is there a fine if there's a ticket? In addition to the ticket, the homeowner pays a fine. Do they have to be a guarantor if there's property damage? Maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned and would want to get the city department's thoughts about, whether the administrative burden, overrides the benefit to those folks who are gone for a short while and want to rent their house out.
Okay, but for the record, we now have several people who are concerned about exempting them from some sort of restriction,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
The owner
And let me say
Yeah.
further on this point that some of the large projects that we've just built, the marketing to the proposed residents in that area are essentially people who primary residence is in Florida. That's their market. And so we've got these huge structures like the Suave building, like the one we've given preliminary approval at Maple and Woodward. We got over 200 units.
Yeah, those aren't quite the problem,
No.
because those people have to be in Florida 183 days.
Correct.
I know, but it still presents a problem of short-term rentals and how we.
Well, they're not
define
going to be
it.
allowed. I mean, they're not going to be allowed short-term rent. End of story if we do what we say we're going to do.
Yes.
It's the people that are here 6 months and a day
And a day.
who then, carte blanche versus some controllable, metered impact.
And
Ms. Boyce.
I agree with what you're saying about this, but I also want to add too that in the reading, a lot of places cities have a requirement that the owners are within so many miles of their properties. So, and that's.
Or a designee.
Or a designee, so that, someone's accountable and close by. So I think that's another burden on staff to make sure that if I'm in Arizona for 5 months or 6 months and renting my house here, that someone's responsible in some way for it, so.
And let me just, there's one little thing I didn't tie down from my perspective, which is that I agree that I'm not concerned about the homeowner who's in the home while the rental takes place. That,
No.
I think that's exempted, that should be exempted.
Right.
And they could do weekends as far as I'm concerned.
Any other comments on this?
The only comment I'd make was the literature called out a very interesting point, and I think it was based upon another country where they said that communities should broadly consider investing in quality enforcement procedures and processes and not just simply apply an ordinance. Defining it in the zoning ordinance or in some other part of it is one part of a process. And if this is a part of our world, then we need to, quote, have the necessary infrastructure, people, to do it,
Enforce it.
Well, in processes. Maybe we need multiple different types of licenses.
Exactly. Have it more sophisticated.
That's what's kind of going through my mind is who let's say you have a weekend and you've got a real kegger going on, and who do you call? I hesitate to call the police in something like that, but I suppose that's the recourse.
I guess that's the recourse.
Yeah.
Got the other telephone number, isn't it?
Yeah, enforcement's going to be important to talk about.
I think the enforcement thing is a big part of it. The
absolutely.
homeowner, say, for example, you're gone for a couple months, and you don't want to deal with the whole rental thing. You just say, you can use my house for a weekend. I got some friends, kids who want to use the house for a weekend. Who do you call? Who do the neighbors call? Somebody's got to appear to resolve the issue.
And just on the enforcement note, there are lots of cities that people visit regularly, tourist areas that have 30-day minimums, and there's lots of ways around it. I mean, you can book a house on Airbnb in an area you might only be in for 10 days. You can book a 30-day rental, and then that gives you access to that property owner. If you have a great rating and you have private access to that property owner, then you can book their place and leave after 10 days. I know people who do it all the time. So, and it's a little risk, I think, for both parties, but, depending on what you work out, these are the sort of things that could potentially be happening. And I don't know how you enforce that, and I don't know what, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard, but
I mean, perfection is the enemy of good, right? So, I mean, let's not get too lost, but you do raise a good point, which is why I said something along the lines, if we're going to let it be less than 30, maybe it's got to be 2 weeks, because even a week, you could easily scam by just having 4 days at $10 a day and 3 days at whatever you need to.
It's true.
So that's why I kind of said some minimum of 2 weeks or something, to make it like a real legitimate heft, if we're going to do any sort of exemption there. So Nick, you're pondering, do you think you've heard enough to start drafting a direction on this?
The answer is yes. I'd like to restate a couple of things, if I can remember them all.
Please.
To your first comment about definitions, I think it's worth noting that just because you define a term doesn't mean you need to put it in a use category. If you use the term in the ordinance, it's not harmful to define it. So
Correct.
there's also other, I don't have apples to apples here, but if you just define short, medium term rentals, and then you have still perhaps this rental unit definition where you refer to all of them, rental unit would be in the use tables, while short, mid, long would just exist in definitions,
I like that.
but are kind of tied to this rental unit. So I think that's probably what I'll explore the most, because I tend to agree that there's not much harm in defining it. I think we're still meeting the goal of what the city commission did or didn't ask for. Darn it, what's the second thing? Oh, no.
You're too young for
Oh.
that, Mr. Curley.
The hosted units seem very clear to me. Is it the it's the owner-occupied units that you think, I think consensus seemed to be, that you
30 days.
think can be permitted but need more regulation?
Right.
yes.
And
Well, they're
Days,
permitted. I mean, they would be permitted.
Permitted, but
The question
regulated.
is whether or not we allow them to go less than 30 days. As the commission suggested, we should exempt them from this.
Why? I don't know why.
Yeah, well, you can ask them Monday,
I will.
but
But I think we can
30
provide our
days.
input.
we can provide our input, and I think the answer you've heard is if we do feel forced into or decide to exempt them somewhat, I think you're hearing enough people say that it can't be just carte blanche. It's got to be another set of rules and regulations
Right.
for them, which might seem silly for what we're going to get out of it, but
And so since we're talking exemptions for perhaps those two specifically, since we talked about things like corporate ownership, we feel good that a broader definition and all the threads that follow cover that? Or do you think we need to address corporate rental housing specifically anywhere?
No, I mean, I think if the structure of your ordinance is short-term rentals defined as 30 days or less, in these zones are prohibited, except case 1, case 2, you don't have to get into
right.
anything else.
I would only add that from a personal perspective, not a zoning and not a planner, but as a resident, I would like the city to consider whether or not administratively there should be a cap on the number of licenses any one entity or related entities or individual could get.
That's a good one.
Because I don't want to see one person or one entity or one company controlling 80% of the rental in this town, jacking up costs everywhere for housing.
Okay,
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that idea, too.
Now, that's not a zoning thing, but
but
It's a code of ordinances
have-
thing.
you could have multiple companies that are affiliated that are owning.
They would have to explain all of, they would have to declare when they get their license, any related LLCs. By penalty of forfeiture or fine. But that's an administrative function, Mr. West.
Well, totally as a resident, following up on your, I think the one thing that wasn't clear to me in listening to the commission discussions is, and I simply don't have an answer to this, except that whatever we're doing and whatever we're setting up and the climate of the city, seems to me that enforcement has got to become a higher priority. And that means people and a budget.
Yeah.
And what department is going to do it. And I haven't heard any discussion or acknowledgement that this is going to cost the city money to enforce. Now, that's not our problem.
No, it's not.
But it's a problem for a resident. And so you triggered my,
I don't need to trigger you.
You're the
I
last
get
person we want to
cranky
trigger.
enough, that's the last
yeah,
thing.
you know, I have to
Let
pull
me-
out my
To
MP badge.
be fair, the city manager, the police department, the building department, and the planning department have done a lot in the last month.
I know they have,
But they can't do it alone, and they can't sustain it.
on an ongoing basis of enforcement, or whatever regulation we come up with, the city has to understand, and the residents will demand enforcement, and they will demand an increased budget to do it. It has to. Otherwise, it's a regulation without enforcement is useless.
All right, Mr. Scher.
So there is a zoning basis for capping the number of units owned by corporate entities as a whole. I don't know that it's legitimate to say, that it solves the problem. If you say Corporation A can't own more than X, Corporation B, Y, so on and so forth, the argument, and this was in the materials we had, is that the ownership by, I'll call them absentee owners, increases. The model on which property is bought and sold shifts from a comparable sales model, which is how things are sold and bought today, to a capitalization of income approach, which is how commercial property is bought and sold. And as you move from a capitalization of income model, prices go up. As prices go up, you have winners and losers. The winner is the person who's lived in their home for a while and sells at this inflated price and moves out. The loser are the folks who stay.
Right, their neighbors.
And the people, the opportunity costs the people who can't move in and attainability. Now, going down that road is somewhat more complicated, and I think may require somewhat more findings than the timeline that we've been given has. But it's, just keep in mind that that's an element, both an element of a way in justification for zoning and also a cost that the short-term rentals impose on.
Right.
I think we could ask the city attorney, frankly, I don't think that's something we have time to do right now, and I don't want to bog it down, but it could be very well an administrative power as well. I don't know, capping the number of licenses the city wishes to grant. So that's all I'm suggesting, is somehow that needs to be looked into.
Last thing, if I may, on this particular question. In my mind, the hosted unit concept or use, what have you, will probably replace the existing renting of rooms land use
I think so.
category.
Yes.
So when you see that come through, I think that's a good change.
Yeah.
Because renting of rooms is kind of amorphous anyways, so it'd be a kind of a,
It's very 1940s.
so, okay. So we agree on that generally. That sounds good. All right.
Talking about my generation.
All right, so they talked about density, Mr. Dupuy, and I think they were pretty clear. They just don't want us to worry ourselves, and, it's a bit of a
Honestly,
red
that's
herring right
great.
now.
Yeah, I think that was good.
Point.
Last one was incentives, and I think they didn't quite get the concept. I don't know that there's much talk about that tonight. It's not a zoning issue, it's really an administrative issue.
Right.
We can bring it up Monday if we feel the need, but
It's not ours.
not really our ballywick, per se. Unless we get into density, which we're not, so. The last comment I had was just, I noticed, because you sent that great set of links to the actual Birmingham, the official code, city code, or I hope I'm
Code of
stating that
ordinances,
correct.
yeah.
Code of ordinances,
Sure.
thank you. That had the listing for all the requirements for rentals, and the application and whatnot, and, I thought that was pretty slick, and I was glad to read that because it did have a lot of things in there that made me feel better.
Yeah, yeah.
My only question is not to do anything other than say this. There were a number of items in there, like parking, occupancy rates, and other things like that that were really good, but struck me as zoning-ish type things. So I wondered aloud, is there an appetite or a desire to shift those into the zoning where we handle things like parking and occupancy and bulk and things like that, as opposed to having them in this tiny little corner over here? I don't particularly have a horse in this fight. I just noticed it, and while we're doing it,
I think Nick would love to have this on his.
I mean, it might be as simple as grabbing 6 bullet points and pulling it into your new ordinance. I don't know, but
I'll say it makes more sense because nothing is worse when you're doing planning work than having to check 2 different places.
right.
That's what I
And
was-
when you're updating ordinances,
I mean, Dave,
fixing
you've
2
been there,
different
right? I
things.
You know, the redundancy, you know, I
Right.
mean, if you just put it, say it once, you know.
In the right spot.
And have it
Yeah.
available by reference. you know.
Yeah.
So just a thought.
So one thing to say about that too, though, is I know in some cities, and I don't remember if it's here or not, but when every year or every other year, you're inspected and you have to pay your licensing fees and you have to fill out the paperwork again, and they ask you the square footage of each bedroom, and they ask you the maximum number of occupants that you intend to rent to, and how many vehicles and how many spaces on your property, car spaces there are for said vehicles. So a nice thing about having those questions in here too is that I think it brings the owners of the property think about it when they otherwise would not necessarily. So, you know, whether the city's checking it, however they should be checking it or not, I think they're nice pieces that are in at least the long-term rental applications, just to keep the owners in check a little bit too, so that they recognize that the city cares about these issues, and otherwise, they may not think, you know, they may not intend to be, the owners may not intend harm, they just may not be thinking along those lines otherwise. So I like that those are part of it.
Good.
Yeah, I think you've raised a very important point, because we all know from being in this small community that when you walk by certain homes, you've no idea whether they're actually owner-occupied or rental, but you've got a pretty damn sure idea that these are rentals because there's 5 cars parked. The driveway hasn't been improved for the best part of 25 years. It's broken asphalt. And the window treatments will vary. I'll leave it at that. But I think this conversation is good because going back to an earlier point, this also is not just relying upon what's in the city code, but it puts the onus on the owners to have more understanding of what's needed to be done when we've got this tension within the city.
Okay. Other comments at the board level? I think this has been a fantastic conversation tonight.
I kind of like the simplicity of the definitions, you know, and then being able to slot them into references, you know, so that people know how to navigate that if they're thinking about doing it. you know.
I would agree that the definition should include beyond short-term rental.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see, even if we don't, at some point, the city's going to deal with rentals beyond 30 days and less than a year. So we might as well start
Just give them a
defining
framework.
them for once, even if we don't want to regulate them right now.
Right. All right, I'm going to open it to the public. We've had some public here. There appears to be nobody on, there might be somebody on Zoom. If you wish to comment, please on Zoom, use the raise your hand function. If you're here, please come forward to the microphone. I will call on you as appropriate and give your name and where you live and just give us your input. Sir, welcome back.
Hi, David Wynn, 1457 East Lincoln. Great discussion, by the way. I think this is where it needs to go. I think the exemptions, the one thing I have a question on is, are they required to have a license to rent under those exemptions?
That's a
The
great
answer will be-
question.
Okay, because
be yes.
But I think the
I
answer is yes.
have a long-term rental, okay, and they do come and inspect every 2 years. I pay for that. I renew the license every year. And they do look at how many people are going to be in there, how many beds are in the room, in there. So I think they do a good job of regulating the licenses that they have. Okay? So I think that enforcement is pretty good. I think some of it is, like anything, like they discussed in the commission, is that they can't see everything. So there needs to be a connection, and I think they're working on that when the neighbor complains to the police that the noise, or there's a party, or there's too many people over there, that they check the rental, see if it is a rental, is it being done short-term? You know what I mean? That they have that kind of check and balance that they haven't had in the past, right? Because the police would come in and just take care of the issue. You can understand that.
Go no further.
And they wouldn't go any further, but you can understand that. They just want to get it under control, go on to the next call, right? It makes sense. But I think there's more attention to it right now, which is a good thing.
Great.
So, but I think also the midterm is something that you should define. Whether you regulate it or not, maybe at some future point you have to. Okay, but, a lot of good discussion, a lot of good progress. It's not easy,
No, it's not.
but I appreciate the work.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps I'll clarify, if I'm not mistaken.
Please.
I think the exemption we're talking about would be from the minimum 30-day standard.
That's my as well.
Not all of the other
Licensing
rental
requirements. It would simply
requirements.
be from the 30-day.
So if you're a hosted unit and you're living in that house, you can rent less than 30 days.
I understand that, but my question is, if you're renting under those conditions,
Yeah.
do you need a license?
Yes.
The answer is going to be 100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be treated as any other rental
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
at this point. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments from the public? Anyone on Zoom care to, I see no hands going up. We'll ask it one last time. All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Thank you, Mr. Dupuy, and thank you,
Yeah,
board. I
thanks,
think this
everyone.
was rather robust. So we will have a few comments to make on Monday with the commission and continue to move forward.
Can I make a suggestion for Monday? And that is that in your opening remarks, and you're going to be given the opportunity, you always are, that you work with Nick on what we've discussed tonight to present a cogent, coherent, and where there are differences, to highlight the differences. I mean, otherwise,
We'll just start rambling.
yeah, no, we can't, we got to get some structure to the
Quickly.
start of the meeting, is my point.
Okay,
And I think you can set the table with Nick.
okay. Well, the biggest one was commercial / mixed use. I mean, that was the biggest, we were
Right.
just in a little bit of a disagreement on.
Right.
The other one was the exemptions and what it means, the
Right.
definitions.
And definitions, and beyond 30 days.
And then beyond that, I'm not sure there was much else that this board at least was taking issue with each other, correct?
Yeah, right.
Those are the real two main ones, so let's work on those together
Okay.
before Monday.
Mr. Chairman, I had one question for Nick. Did I read somewhere that the city has reached out to Airbnb to
Yes.
discuss with them what?
So I'm going to tell you what I understand. Is the building department reached out to Airbnb because what we've discovered is what we believe to be a bevy of unlicensed short-term Airbnb rentals that we found on their platform. And it would follow that you should be able to ask Airbnb to remove those from their platform.
Because they're not.
And that's the gist of the request, is we found, let's say, 12 unlicensed, unregistered rentals
Yeah.
that are currently being advertised on your platform. You need to take them down, opening their case and doing their, whatever they may term it. That's what I understand the building department is doing right now.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. That's a wrap.
All right, let's move along. Pre-ops, I don't see any.
No.
All right.
held our
Very
breath.
well.
for
Yeah, we
a
held our
second.
breath. Mr. Dupuy, let's see, we got project updates. I don't know if there are any questions on there. List is getting smaller. That's good.
I will at least tell you that the BESTech development got their variances last night.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So it's on, yep.
Is it real good?
Well, the two variances.
It ended up being three.
Oh.
A story in the MU7, a story in the MU5,
I talked to him.
3 feet height.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think.
Because of the grade.
5 feet.
And it went well. I mean, there was not a lot of
Good.
fight. They did a great job, so
Good.
they got them.
Good.
Administrative approvals, I don't know if anyone has any questions.
No.
We've got our agenda for the 24th, which is a,
Can I ask a question on
Jam-packed.
who is the architect for 35001 Woodward?
Soroki Architecture.
Shocking.
Mr. Dupuy, I have a question on,
Owns this place.
I have a question on the agenda for the 24th.
Yes.
I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items, and I thought we were limited to 5. Am I mistaken? Am I just,
No, we are limited.
why do we have 7?
So things like 35001 are listed twice, 260 is listed
Well,
twice.
because they're 2 different approvals.
Yeah, so our rules of procedure only splits CIS and preliminary. It indicates that when you have those applications, CIS is one, preliminary is one. But in the case of special land use permits, for example, that's considered one item.
So we really have 4 by your definition.
It's technically 5, I think. Oh, yeah, 4. 4. It's 4 addresses, 4 projects,
Yeah.
5 items by our rules of procedure.
May want to look at those rules at some point. All right, thank you. And we talked about making sure we have enough people here for that, so you can work on that, Mr. Dupuy.
Yes.
Last reminder, we have the joint meeting on Monday, and that is at the DPS?
It does have to be
Library?
at DPS, and we will advertise that. The library had a the board meeting.
So DPS over on Eaton,
Is it at 7 o'clock or?
It'd be at 7 o'clock, yes.
700.
Their time.
Okay.
Got to play golf earlier.
Yes. And while we're on that, while everyone's looking down, I know I sent it to you late last night, but I did get a start on the joint memo. I hope you saw that was this memo for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was the best way to do it. I will edit it a bit to add some context about what happened tonight, and then I will add questions to specific the commercial and about the exemptions.
And then work with
Yeah, bounce it off me as best you need to, and
the
we'll,
chairman,
Yeah,
his
it's-
opening remarks.
We'll talk, but it's going to have to be early tomorrow. The other section, though, on the zoning ordinance update, I wanted to at least tell you, this is a really awkward time in the project, the life of the project. They're off doing their preliminary recommendations report where they scour our ordinances and develop recommendations. That should be finalized in July-ish, so we don't have that much to talk about. But I want to make sure we do at least talk about
we
it.
need to keep them updated, and
And at
just-
least tell
I think
them
you
what
did a
we've
good
done
job
up to this
explaining,
point.
yeah.
So it's going to feel thin, both in the report and my presentations and the questions I'm asking. And we'll let
The first part.
We'll let the conversation generate whatever else needs to come up. I just don't want to play the guessing game.
Okay.
So just want you to expect that.
Okay.
But Janet was happy with it for the most part, the memo, so we're looking good.
Perfect.
DPS.
It's DPS at 7 PM.
7 p.m.
Okay.
All right. Any other business before this
Can I at
panel?
least ask you one question?
Yes.
It is very low pressure.
Yes.
But on July 10th, I do have other applications that have been streaming in. I heard a couple of no's for late July. Do you want to, it'll have short-term rentals on it. Do you want to have anything else, or do you want to keep it short-term rentals?
July 8th?
You want a mixed meeting?
July 8th, yeah.
July
A mixed
8th.
meeting on the, I would
July
go with a
8th.
mixed meeting to hear one additional item, but I don't want 2 and 3 and 4.
people
Yeah, no, and it would have to be
Bring
a,
'em.
maybe an easy one, too, I'll be honest with you.
It
I
would
want to
be-
devote as much time to this as we're going to need.
So we don't,
We meet next time.
we can set the agenda for that meeting at our next meeting.
The item I would have is a special land use permit. I need more time for that, to do noticing.
Oh,
Okay.
So
So you
that's
wanna
why I'm
do it
asking you tonight, if you consider it. You can, honestly, you could tell me no. It's just a,
Why don't we just?
that and short term, those are the 2 things? The only 2 things on the agenda?
Yeah.
Oh, we can do that.
All right, so
On the 8th?
I'll make a motion that the July 10th,
8th, yes, forgive
8th
me.
meeting be both study session and site plan consideration dual meeting.
Support.
Motion, Mr. Williams, support, Mr. Scher. Any other conversation at the board?
I'm now picking up the zoning ordinance update project. That's the part that's going to be fairly perfunctory.
We're not.
I'm
we're
keeping
not
it on
there
these
yet.
agendas because
Not there yet.
it's kind of like
Here.
a,
Yeah, I know, but it's not going to be extensive.
That's my point. That's my point.
yes,
Okay, fair
if at
enough.
all.
Okay.
Not yet, I was just comment on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, Nick got his wish.
Thank you. I just need the flexibility. I won't even guarantee that it'll come. I just,
All right, hit the gong.
the 22nd of June, July is going to be also full. So I'm looking for
Well,
a little bit of
Whatever.
relief.
getting site plans, that's good.
That's good.
Sure is.
All right, with that, meeting adjourned.
Cool.